How's the stashes? Now, for this year's Christmas concert, my church down in Mont has decided to reenact the Christmas Truce of 1914. As a history nerd, I of course could not resist in getting involved. But for those of you who don't know the story and can't get to the Mont character to watch, allow me to tell you the story. So on a cold, frost-bitten morning in December 1914, the sun rose over the scarred and frozen fields of Flanders. The world had been at war for almost 6 months. Politicians and generals had promised their people that this war would be finished by Christmas. But as Christmas Eve dawned, the trenches on either side of no man's land were lined with weary and homesick soldiers. They were caught up in the horrors of the First World War, a conflict that had already become a grueling stalemate, with soldiers enduring horrific conditions in trenches that stretched across Belgium and France. Constant artillery bombardments, deadly sniper fire, and the looming threat of gas attacks made life in the trenches miserable. Morale was low as Christmas approached, and soldiers on all sides longed for the comforts of home. In a desperate attempt to cease hostilities, Pope Benedict XV had earlier suggested a formal ceasefire to celebrate Christmas. But his proposal was rejected by the warring nation's leadership, who saw no possibility of pausing hostilities. However, in an unprecedented move, the soldiers in the trenches, far removed from the political and strategic calculations of their leaders, took matters into their own hands. During the night of Christmas Eve 1914, on the German side of the line, the soldiers began preparing for the holiday as best they could. Small pine trees hauled from nearby villages or fashioned from branches were adorned with candles and propped up along the trenches. As the light faded, a few daring men began singing softly, their voices rising into the night air like fragile whispers of hope. The hauntingly familiar melody of Silent Night carried across the empty space between the trenches, reaching the ears of British soldiers huddled in their own dugouts. For a moment they froze, uncertain if it was a trap. But then one of them began to sing along in English. Others joined in hesitantly, their voices weaving together across the icy void. When the songs ended, a strange and unexpected silence fell, broken only by the distant crackle of a fire and the soft crunch of frost underfoot. Then, in the early hours of Christmas Day, out of the darkness, a voice called out, first in German and then halting English. "You no shoot, we no shoot." The message was relayed along both lines, passed from soldier to soldier, until an unspoken understanding emerged. Slowly, cautiously, heads began to appear above the parapets. A few brave men climbed out of their trenches and into no man's land, hands raised to show they meant no harm. British and German soldiers met in the middle, exchanging tentative smiles and handshakes. What happened next seemed like a miracle. Soldiers who had spent months trying to kill one another now traded gifts like cigarettes, chocolate, buttons, and small keepsakes. Some shared photographs of loved ones back home, while others exchanged stories, using a mix of broken languages and gestures. They even buried the bodies of their dead comrades and repaired trenches and dugouts. A football appeared from somewhere, and soon makeshift matches were underway, laughter and cheers echoing across the battlefield. It must be noted here that the truce was not observed everywhere along the Western Front. On other parts of the front, the fighting continued, and casualties still did occur on Christmas Day. But in this particular sector, for a few precious hours, the war was forgotten. Men who had once been enemies shared food, drink, and the simple joys of humanity. They sang carols together, their voices mingling in a spontaneous chorus of peace and goodwill. The bitter cold seemed less biting, the war less senseless. However, by dawn on Boxing Day, reality was brought back to the front lines. Senior officers on both sides, alarmed by reports of fraternization, issued stern orders to end the truce. Reluctantly, the soldiers returned to their trenches, some with tears in their eyes. They knew that by evening the guns would roar again, and the fragile bond formed in the stillness of Christmas would be shattered. As the first shots rang out that morning, many soldiers hesitated, aiming their weapons deliberately wide. They couldn't bring themselves to fire on the men they had laughed and sung with just hours before. The war resumed with its full ferocity, and such large-scale unofficial truces were forbidden and never repeated. However, smaller, localized ceasefires occasionally occurred throughout the conflict, often to recover the wounded or the dead. For those who experienced it, the Christmas Truce of 1914 remained a poignant memory, a rare moment when humanity triumphed over the horrors of war. It has since become a powerful symbol of peace and goodwill, demonstrating that even in the darkest times, individuals can find common ground. The Christmas Truce of 1914 was brief, a fleeting moment of humanity amidst the unrelenting brutality of war, but it left an indelible mark on all who experienced it. For one day, amidst the chaos of the First World War, peace had reigned, not decreed by generals or politicians, but born of the simple, shared yearning for home and humanity.